Elite athletes, world-class musicians, and top performers all have one thing in common. They know how to access the flow state, a powerful mental zone where peak performance and rapid learning happen. But what if you could tap into that state on command? In the past few videos, we've explored the feedback loop in learning, how to give and receive feedback, and how reflection turns that feedback into action. What if we could tighten that feedback loop even further so that learning and adaptation happen in real time? That's what flow is all about. And in today's video, I'll show you what flow is, how it accelerates learning, and how you can create the conditions to enter flow at will. So let's start with what it is. It was coined by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Say it with me. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. Flow is a state of complete immersion where you perform at your best without conscious effort. This isn't just about getting in the zone, but a lot of people call it that. It's actually a scientific phenomenon. It's a state of mind that enhances learning, creativity, and productivity. Now, I want to make sure that this is clear what flow is not. It's not some mystical force or some random burst of inspiration. Flow is a trainable skill. You don't have to wait for it. Like Stephen Pressfield writes in The Art of War, that was Sun Tzu. In The War of Art, he says that waiting for inspiration is a losing game. Instead, you can set the conditions to access flow reliably. Well, let's talk about the key elements of flow. There are 7, but really only, I would say, 3 or 4 of them do you have actually any control over. So 1, first key element of flow is to consistently enter flow, you need to have the right conditions set. So the first one is to establish clear goals for yourself. A defined objective keeps your mind focused. A basketball player's objective is to put the ball on the hoop, right? An artist might be trying to paint for an hour or 2 a day. A writer, same thing. Their objective might be to fill a page with words or to get through the next chapter of their story. People experience it in yoga. You might have a goal in yoga that you're working on towards a particular pose. I remember when I was taking lots of math classes in school, when I was in school, experiencing flow state with math. The idea is that you have to have some clear objective that is balanced with your current level of skill, right? So that's the second element. There's a challenge skill balance. The task must be hard enough to engage you, but not so difficult that it creates anxiety or overwhelm. If the challenge is too far outside of your comfort zone, then you're going to experience anxiety or overwhelm and you'll give up. But if it's just outside of what you currently know, just over your edge, explorer's edge, right? If it's just past your edge, then you have found that sweet spot. Some educational theorists refer to it as the zone of proximal development. So the first thing that will happen is that you'll experience a loss of self-consciousness. There's no second guessing yourself. You're fully present in the moment. That part of you that you think is you, that you associate with you, that you identify as me, that part goes away and you become part of something larger or grander or outside of yourself. The second thing that happens is time distortion. Time either speeds up or it slows down depending on your level of focus. Some people experience time going by very quickly, like they just look up and all of a sudden 3 hours have passed while they've been engaged in their activity. And other people experience a moment slowing down where minutes feel like hours or days. And it's like as if time stops. They exist outside of time. It's a really cool experience. The last thing that you experience is called intrinsic motivation. So flow thrives when you're doing something for its own sake, not for external rewards. You're not doing this thing because you're going to get paid or because you're going to get a pat on the back or you're going to get some sort of accolades or reward, or you don't do it because of an external force. You do it because of the internal force. The internal gratification motivates you to do it for its own sake. When you do it for an external reward, you actually drop out of flow state. And that's why people who haven't mastered this skill, and when they start to do something that they love for money, it kind of ruins it for them. So those are the 7 things that the key elements of flow. The first 3 or 4 that you actually have influence over are setting clear goals, looking for immediate feedback, and then acting on it in the moment. And the challenge skill balance and deep focus is something that you have partial influence over, right? And then from that, you'll experience a loss of self-consciousness, time distortion, and an intrinsic motivation to keep going. So let's talk about the role of feedback in flow, because that's a really important part. And that's why the first several videos of this series are about feedback. So one of the biggest drivers of flow is instantaneous feedback, whether from your environment, from your performance, or from someone else. Maybe it's dance, right? And that involves a partner. Or if you're playing sport, that involves a collective flow, right? Some people if you've ever been on a team that's really effective and everything just flows and clicks together, you're experiencing group flow. If you've ever been on a team that's bad, people are not clicking, things are not flowing, right? That's also part of this conversation. But the point of feedback, whether you're getting it from a partner or from your own performance in the activity, or if you're getting it from your environment itself, and this connects directly to our previous video on reflection. Except in flow, that reflection happens in real time. We talked about how when you receive feedback from perhaps a coworker or a spouse or a teammate or your coach, that you need to take time and go reflect and ask yourself if there's any truth to this, to the feedback that they've given you. In flow state, this happens instantaneously. You've closed that feedback loop so that it's, instead of it being this big feedback loop, it's actually this really tightly wound thing that just happens instantly as you're in the moment. Think of a basketball player adjusting their shot, like mid-shot, right? And they can feel the ball rolling off their fingertips, and they can feel, based on where the ball is on their fingertips, they know whether or not it's going to sink into the hole before they even lose contact. Same thing with a writer, finding the perfect phrase mid-sentence. I find when I'm writing, especially by hand, that my brain is almost like a Rolodex, thinking about what's the right word and turn of phrase before I get to the end of the sentence. And it's playing through all of these options, almost like a flow chart, and then it narrows down into just the right phrase. That's how I know I'm in flow. Another example is when a teacher teaches a concept. I've had this experience as well. They're up there on the board and they're teaching a concept, and they're really excited about it, and they turn around and they see that all their students are kind of deadpanned. They're not really following. And then so the teacher is able to immediately take that feedback. The students' look on their face, that's the feedback, and they can adjust their lesson right then and there, immediately. As they're able to adjust their instruction, then they start to see different responses from the students. They're connected, they're attuned, they're in flow, right? So the faster your brain receives relevant feedback, the more seamless your performance becomes. And you can experience this flow in everyday life. Many people associate flow with elite athletes, artists, musicians, but flow is for everyone. So I want to talk now about how flow shows up in your daily life. It can show up in creative work. We've talked about sports and movement, right? We've talked about teaching and speaking, but basically, if anything that involves problem solving within something that you have some level of proficiency in with a skill that is just beyond your level of skill, right? But it can happen in conversations. It can happen while you're organizing or cleaning. I've heard of programmers experiencing flow while they're coding. If you're a video gamer, I enjoy video games and I experience flow often, especially with racing games. Things that you don't really have a whole lot of time to think about and you just have to act. Anywhere you can lose yourself in the process, you're probably experiencing flow. So let's talk about how to trigger it. We've already talked about the conditions of flow. If you want to experience flow more consistently, here's what you can do. I've got 6 things for you. First up, identify your flow activities. Know what challenges you just enough to stay engaged, but not be overwhelmed by it. 2, eliminate distractions. Silence your notifications. Set a timer. Create a focused work environment. 3, use chunked reflection. All right, what I mean by this is that your feedback reflection time has to be shortened down to as small of a chunk as you can make it. You can make your chunks to be granular sized, like grains of sand, that your feedback loop is that small. That's what we're looking for, right? If it takes you 24 hours to process feedback, fine. Perhaps your flow state is extended over a larger period. That's okay. But if you can get that feedback loop down to almost instantaneous, you can break your work into short bursts and then immediately adjust based on that feedback. And that invites flow. So actually, my numbers 3 and 4, use chunk reflection and tighten your feedback loop, are connected. So you find the ways to get instant results. Number 5 is to enter with an intention. I mentioned before that you have a goal in mind. Before starting, clarify your goal. So I will focus completely for the next 30 minutes is a good goal. I will fill this page with words is a good goal. And finally, number 6, lean into the intrinsic motivation. Engage in activities for the pure joy of doing them. You don't necessarily have to do it to improve. You might be playing music in order to improve on an instrument, but before making it an achievement-oriented goal, just enjoy it for the sake of doing it. Allow yourself to play. And I mean that not just play an instrument, but like play for like children play. Just play like an artist. Just play basketball, play soccer, play a video game. Just allow yourself to play. Allow yourself to be a kid. That is an essential part of this formula. And before we close out, I want to talk a little bit about the myth of effortlessness. Many people think that flow is effortless. And in a sense, they're right. Flow requires a sort of zen about it, a sense of not trying too hard. But there is effort that goes into it before the flow state begins, because it's about setting the right challenge that is just over your edge. It also involves eliminating distractions, which requires effort. And you also have to refine your process to allow flow to happen. Flow doesn't just happen. Like, it's not just inspiration. It's not the cosmic force that like drives you to take out the trash, right? That doesn't happen. It's not inspiration, because inspiration is different. We can do a whole other video series on that. But flow is something that is repeatable, that you can create, where you can create the conditions to enable it to happen. So there is some effort involved. You have to try to build the conditions for the flow state, and it will arrive, but it does require preparation and your attention to feedback and some level of skill. All right, so let's close it up, bring it all together. Flow isn't just about peak performance. It's about better learning. It's about deeper engagement, and it's about finding joy in the process. In a world full of distractions, finding flow is how you reclaim your focus, your energy, and your creativity. So, what's one area in your life where you could apply these flow principles? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. If you're ready to harness flow and improve your learning, creativity, and productivity, check out my free resources at Explorer's Edge. You can find a link in the description below, and you can explore my coaching and courses. Remember, the best learning happens at the edge of what you already know. So keep exploring the edge and expand your possibilities. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.